Hi, this is Miss Nikki. Welcome to my channel. I am so excited to start making my very first video about children's mental health, trauma work, working with immigrants and multicultural families, and just providing some psychoeducation based off of my perspective um, as a therapist. I am a school-based mental health therapist, and I currently work in two elementary schools. And throughout my work, here are just some things that I want children to know about therapy. One of the very first things that I want them to know is that your feelings are valid and real. Because a lot of children and adults live with this misconception that people are supposed to feel happy or joyous or excited all the time, and that we're not supposed to feel sad, mad, angry, or disappointed, which implies that feelings are good or bad. We're putting the labels of good and bad on feelings. We don't have good or bad feelings. We have some feelings that are easier and we have some feelings that are more difficult. But we don't have good or bad feelings. But regardless of how easy or difficult those feelings are, they're all normal, they're all natural, and they're all part of our lives. And we're all going to experience them at some point or another. Labeling these feelings as difficult or negative, it can be labeling the difficult feelings as negative can be very invalidating, and it is detrimental to a child's building foundational knowledge, and it damages their developing ability to be able to express their feelings effectively. When we're told that feelings are bad, we don't express them. We repress them, we hold them inside. Then we don't learn how to cope with them. And we always say, when we keep things inside, we end up exploding. And that explosion from repressing our feelings can actually be very catastrophic a lot of times. The second thing is the second thing that I want to say is you're allowed to disagree with me in a therapy session because children, no matter how young, are the expert in their own life. What they like, what they don't like, what triggers certain feelings, and what coping skills they find helpful and not helpful. A lot of children have coping skills without realizing that they have them. Through the therapy process, children need the space to talk about those things. And we work together sometimes to figure out what some of those triggers are and what are some helpful coping skills. What are you already using as a coping skill that you don't know? So, because a lot of kids don't know these things, we are providing the psychoeducation for them and kind of making those connections for them. But you know what? With all that, sometimes I misunderstand stuff. Sometimes I will mishear you. Sometimes um, I might have a different understanding of something that you shared, and I am not perfect. If something that I do say is confusing, doesn't make sense, or my interpretation of something is just flat out wrong, kids are allowed to tell me, and I love when they do because it's a really good sign. It means that they trust me and they feel safe enough to tell me those feelings and not hold back. Just because I'm an adult, it doesn't mean that I automatically agree with other adults in a child's life. A lot of kids often see all the adults as having the same values, same ideals, same beliefs. It is not usually until when they get older and become adolescents that they realize, not all the adults in my life think the same. And in fact, many kids in an adult's life are not right. They're wrong. And you know what? They're probably the reason that child is in therapy. Something that we work with kids in therapy is not how to agree with adults all the time, but how to deal with the fact that one, we're going to disagree with people around us, but how can we cope with it and how can we continue to live our day-to-day life and function within the environment that they're in, even when they disagree with an adult. No one ever gets in trouble in my office for anything. And I say that because I work in a school. And because I work in a school, a lot of kids that come to my office assume that I have the authority to implement disciplinary protocols and actions for them not following certain school rules. I don't implement school protocol because I'm not a school employee. I'm a contract. A lot of mental health clinicians are contracted to the school district, and they provide services on school grounds, but they're hired by another mental health agency. So I'm not a school employee. I'm not the principal. I'm not the guidance counselor. I don't work in administration, so I can't and I don't implement, disciplinary action on something that a child did. I am only responsible for really abiding by the rules of confidentiality and only breaking confidentiality when it is needed. Um, Another thing that I tell children is that children's opinions matter in a family session. A lot of times, we have family sessions for the child, and children become incredibly quiet. And their parents just start saying their opinions a lot, and the kid is just sitting there kind of very quiet, very to themselves, even if it's a kid that is very talkative in an individual session. A lot of times kids are afraid to say their opinion. They're afraid of what their parents are going to say. They're afraid that their opinions don't matter, and they're afraid of retaliation. I hold therapy sessions and family sessions for the betterment of the child within their family unit. And children often feel voiceless within their homes, schools, and communities. My goal is to empower that child to have that voice within my safe therapeutic space without the fear of retaliation. Because that's how I, as a therapist, provide them with emotional safety, even if that emotional safety is from the child's parents. I'm never going to do anything or tell anyone anything without talking to the child first. Outside of the limits of confidentiality, you know, me and a kid are having a therapy session, and there's some things that come up that I might feel are clinically appropriate to discuss with a teacher or with a parent. I will always let the child know first. I will always say, hey, Johnny, I think it's a good idea for us to tell your teacher or your mom or your dad about this. I think it's good for them to know. Let's talk about why it's good for them to know. Because of X, Y, and Z. How do you feel about that? The child is allowed to have concerns. Oh, I don't want my parents to know that. Oh, I'm afraid about what my teacher will say. I'm afraid it won't matter. And I want kids to tell me that because we will talk it through. We will work through it. I will utilize, different therapy techniques and questions to really figure out what is the best way that we can approach telling the teacher or the parent this very important thing that's part of the child's treatment, but I also need to make sure that the child is okay with it. Let's say we have all our conversation and the child is still not comfortable. They're still not okay. They're still anxious. They're still hesitant. At that point, what the child says goes. Because that is how they're going to feel safe within my therapy space. If a child says, I still don't feel comfortable, that's okay. We are not breaking limits of, you're not telling me anything outside of the limits of confidentiality. You're not telling me anything within limits of confidentiality. So that's okay. I'm not going to tell any adult. We can just discuss it later or whenever you're ready, okay? This is something that really gets to me. Kids are never bad, but they might make bad choices. When you tell an adult you are being bad, an adult has the ability to have that abstract thought that when you're telling me I'm bad, it's not I'm bad as a person. It's the thing that I did. That you're like, oh, you were being bad because you made a bad choice. Children developmentally don't have that capability yet. So everything that you tell them is very literal. When a child makes a bad choice, they don't follow directions, they defy your orders, they defy your instruction, and you tell them you're being bad, For them, they're learning that I'm a bad person, that my character is bad. And because they believe that their character, they're bad as a person, it can also prevent them from believing that they can correct their actions. It's times like this where it really breaks my heart when a 4 or 5 year old comes to my office and they say that my mom said I'm being bad. My dad said I'm being bad. Because a lot of times afterwards it's followed by, my mom doesn't love me because I'm bad. And hearing a child say that over something like not following directions, not putting your shoes on,